There comes a moment in life when you have to decide, are you playing it safe or are you all in? This is All In Empowerment, the podcast where we crush fears and step boldly into the life you were meant to live. I'm your host, Betsy Martell, coach and adventurer, here to push you past your limits and unlock your full potential. It's time to level up your life because empowerment isn't just a mindset, it's a commitment. So are you ready? Because in this space, we don't tiptoe, we go all in. All right. So today on All In Empowerment, I've got with me Dwight Sanvold. I'm saying that right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. And so Dwight, very opposite of me, he loves to run. He loves triathlons. He is a triathlon coach, a fitness coach, a swim coach, running coach.
Yes.
Am I missing anything?
No.
Okay.
My background is I'm a licensed athletic trainer. So I worked in sports medicine for years and then got into triathlon coaching and opened my own business.
Okay. Yeah. So he has his business online is fastandyou.com.
Correct.
So fastandyou.com. How did you come up with the name Fast and You?
Well, my kids and I thought about FLOP, fitness for lazy old people, but we thought that was maybe not such a great idea. It just was a great act. I just sat at the kitchen table with my family and we kind of came up with it,
Okay.
Fitness and sports training and fast. And, I had hoped that fast wouldn't scare away people who weren't fast, but, it's worked out good. And so I just came up with it on my own.
Yeah, I love it. FLOP. That's awesome. Well, that's kind of like we were talking before and I was talking about, I always dreamt of putting together some kind of intro to the gym exercise program for lack of a better term, the nerdy kids that aren't athletic.
Yeah.
The non-athletic kids, right?
Right.
And that was where I always got stuck. People would look at me and they're like, what are you going to say? It's, exercise for nerds. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like,
yeah,
maybe they'll,
I think they'd embrace it.
I know. I think they're just self-proclaimed nerds. I think they love it, So
I think the stigma's off of being a nerd now.
Yeah.
Because nerds make good money.
Right. Yeah. The nerds are the ones that can afford the gym membership, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's always been my dream. But yeah, I kind of like FLOP. I was like, do I say nerd in the, so, okay. So we are going to work on that idea together though. We're going to get the nerds in the gym.
Yeah, I'd look forward to that.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got into, you just fell in love with triathlon.
Yeah.
How?
I played small college football and I ran track and field. And I got done playing college football and I knew the NFL was not going to be not knocking at my door. So, I just kind of kept lifting a lot of weights and running. And, one day I said, why are you carrying all this bulk? Why don't you shed it and get into running more? And so I did. And because I was a mid-distance runner in long sprinter, 400, 800 meter runner in college.
Okay.
And I started running some more distance. I entered a 10K. I did pretty well. And I met a guy there. We had a dead sprint for the finish at this 10K. And we got in a conversation. He said, do you have a bike? I said, yeah. I didn't know where he was going with this, He said, can you swim? I said, oh, yeah, I can swim. Well, there's this thing coming up. And at the time, we were living in Rhinelander. Wisconsin. And so this guy said, there's this triathlon over in Tomahawk, in June. You should think about doing it. And I thought about doing it like right away. I thought this could be cool. And at the time, my wife and I were renting a little 2-bedroom home on Lake Thompson up in Rhinelander. And so I had swimming right out my door. $240 a month for a 2-bedroom home with lake frontage.
Geez. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So think about that.
Careful, everybody's going to flock to Wisconsin when they hear that.
Yeah. I'm sure it's not that way anymore. That would have been in 1988.
Okay.
And spring of 88. And so, I started, swimming off my dock in the open water and started biking a lot more and running more. And this race.
Were you a swimmer before then? Like a competition type swimmer?
No.
Okay.
No, but I had the whole realm of lessons as a kid, and I picked it up pretty well. So I knew how to do freestyle.
Okay.
Fairly well, and was, and if I don't know something, I'll look up and read everything I can about how to do it better. And so, I was just really captivated by this whole idea. And so I was trying already to hone my technique and et cetera. And so anyway, I entered this race and I did okay. I did pretty well. Triathlon was really in its infancy then. Like our transition areas were spray painted squares on the grass. And I got a picture of my wife bending over, handing me my shoes in transition. And she's like 7.5 months pregnant.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So,
That's awesome.
she's just out to here handing me my shoes. And so anyway, I did that one. I did pretty well. And then I did another one about 6 weeks later. And the guy who taught me about triathlon, I beat him pretty soundly. He wasn't too wild about that.
Wow.
But I knew that, okay, I could be better than average at this. So, then I was hooked. After
Okay.
the second one for sure.
So excuse my ignorance on this. What's the miles on each segment of a triathlon?
Well, it depends on the there's 4 different distances really.
Okay.
The sprint distance is where most people should start. They should sign up for a sprint first, but you swim a quarter mile.
Okay.
You bike usually 15 or 16, and then you run a 5K.
Okay.
And then there's the Olympic distance or international distance, and there you swim 1.5 kilometers or 9/10 of a mile, 40-kilometer bike ride or 25 miles, and then you run a 10K or 6.2 miles.
Okay.
Half Ironman is 1.2 miles swim, 56-mile ride, and a 13-mile run. And then the full Ironman is a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then a full marathon, 26-mile marathon.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
it's a day.
So if you tuned into episode 11 with Dan Trewicki, this is Dan's coach. And Dan came to him not equipped at all to do an Ironman, but that's what he was set out to do.
That's correct. Yeah.
So you took him on. And so when you take on clients, is there like a certain vetting that you do? You where will you take on anybody, or do you really kind of vet them and say like, okay, like, this is going to be somebody who I'm going to be able to work with that's serious and is, or do you just kind of...
We do an interview
for it.
process.
Okay.
I have them come in, in person into my studio.
Okay.
And I have coached people who I've only met, via phone or online. But normally they come into my studio. We have a one-on-one. And if it, I think in the conversation, as it unfolds, especially if they're going to do a full Ironman, they might talk themselves out of it.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah. But has there been anybody that you have said no to? Just, like this really isn't going to work out,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can only remember one individual, but that was an individual that I thought, this person not coachable.
Okay.
I could tell that this person was not going to follow a training plan in any way, shape, or form. They had too many of their own ideas already.
Yep. They already thought they knew it all. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the only person I can think of. But everybody else I've taken on. And sometimes, normally we have really good success. And once in a while, I have a person who doesn't want to follow the training plan.
So what did you see? So obviously, I realize people haven't listened to every single one of my episodes, so they may have missed that episode with Dan Trewicki, but he decided that he was going to do full Ironman, right?
Yes.
At the age of 57.
Yep.
And he did not really have a bike, or was a biker at that
fledgling biker. Yeah.
And barely knew how to swim
Right.
properly. So what was it about him when he came to you? Because it kind of sounds like I would have looked at him and been like, dude, I think you're over your head. But but for you, what was it about him did you know him before this?
I did not.
Okay.
When the person who told him about Ironman, Jason, used to own Endurance House in Delafield.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jason was telling Dan about Ironman and saying, hey, you should get into triathlon, etc. And when Jason got a hold of me and said, hey, I've got somebody for you, I think you would be a good candidate for your coaching. he said, his name is Dan Trewicki. And I go, where do I know that name? Where do I know that name?
From all the billboards and
Yeah. So then, Dan was sheriff of Waukesha County for 25 years. And so then, when I heard he had no experience, but he had run a marathon or two, and I don't want to, he might have run 2 or 3 even, but he had completed them. And then I knew, he knew a little bit about endurance. He knew a little bit about suffering. But then as I shared with you, maybe in a conversation we had before, when I found out he was sheriff of Waukesha County, or when I started thinking about that, I thought, normally I wouldn't want to take on somebody who really can't swim, has not done a lot of biking, and signed up for a full Ironman that was only like 10 months away. That's a big task, right?
Yeah.
Big task. And, especially the open water swimming can be just overwhelming for people that don't know how to swim.
Right.
But, I said to myself, if you're sheriff of Waukesha County for 25 years, you've seen a big deal.
Yeah.
You've seen many big deals. You know how to handle a big deal. And part of being successful, especially in a full Ironman, is knowing how to handle big deals or handle things that are not going exactly your way and keep persisting.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that he couldn't have survived in that job for that long if he didn't have the right kind of personality that was going to make him successful in Ironman. And so I said, I'll take this guy on, because I can teach him what he needs to know if he has the right attitude and if he's persistent and coachable. And I just felt he really was after we talked in person. And so I gladly took him on. And we were together a long time.
He was a self-proclaimed non-athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And, he started running. The story is that he started running. And I think he ran a mile, then he ran 2 miles. And then finally, after, I don't know, a month or 2 months or whatever it was, I can't remember the timeline, he was able to run 3 miles and thought that was, huge accomplishment, which it is. I have to agree. But he started that pretty late in his life. It wasn't like he grew up as an athlete and grew up as a runner or anything like that. I mean, this was something that he just thought, well, I should get in shape. And so maybe I'll start running,
Yeah.
And so that's amazing. But between 57 and 67, he did 15 Ironman.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many people do you know that do more than one Ironman competitions a year?
Not a lot that do more than one a year. Yeah. He just really threw himself at it.
Yeah.
And so, by the time we were into the 3rd, 4th year of training, he'd done enough that he was getting pretty well versed. And it gave us the opportunity to really work through a lot of things and keep chiseling away, so that things that were really difficult were still difficult, but manageable. So, yeah.
And he talks about, the mindset just being, 99% of, what you do, there's the train. Well, maybe not 99%, that might be a little high, but it's really, you do the training, you do the work, you follow the program.
Yep.
But if you don't have the correct mindset, you're really not going
absolutely
where you need to go.
Yeah. Especially, like I mentioned, in a full Ironman, like a sprint distance. I'm not going to downplay sprint distance. It's great when people do a sprint distance, but you're only swimming a 1/4 mile.
Yeah.
If you're good, you're going to be done in about 6 minutes with that swim. If you're not so good, it might take you 9, Right. You're going to be done with that bike in 40 minutes if you're good. If you're not so fast, you're going to be done in an hour, and you don't have to crush it. And
Right.
then a 5K is really manageable, but when you get out there in a race that's 140 miles long, and it's taken the whole day, you got to have the right mindset.
Yeah, and the weather may not be cooperating. It could be very
Absolutely.
hot. It's,
They're going to be low lows, and then there'll be high highs, and you got to be able to ride each of them out.
Yeah.
And stay with the plan. Your highs, you can't say all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to just blow the doors off of this bike and end up walking on the run, because you couldn't control your emotions at that time. And conversely, there are times you feel like getting off the bike and throwing it in the ditch. And You can't do that either. So, and Dan was very good at managing that. Like you said, he knew that he was going to come out of the lows, and he just took it in stride.
Yeah.
So,
And, it's really about converting to living in the moment, right? Because I think when you look too far ahead, at least, for me, that's when I get in trouble, right? If you're not living in the moment at that time and you're saying, oh my God, I have so many more miles to go, or so,
yeah.
whatever it is, it becomes overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You just have to be able to tell yourself that just keep pedaling, just keep pedaling, Who was a little fish in
Dora, right?
Yeah, I think Dora. Yeah, just
Dora.
keep swimming, just
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
swimming. Yeah, you got to just keep pedaling.
Yeah.
So, and I've had moments in Ironmans where I was 40 miles into the bike ride, with like 72 miles to go. And I'm like, this is horrible. I feel really not good right now. Why am I doing this? I'm getting passed by people who aren't even close to my ability. What's going on? And you just got to ride it out. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're going 30 miles an hour for a section, so.
Yeah. Now, what's your, if you have one, your least favorite out of the three, biking, swimming, running? Or I guess, where do you have to find your most mental toughness? Say I'll put it in more of a positive. On the bike, yeah.
On the bike, yeah. I mean, you're out there the longest.
Okay.
Even in, for any length, whether it be a sprint or an Ironman, you're out there in the longest on the bike. And it can just be really a grind.
What's the thing that or do you have a thing that you tell yourself, in those low moments? Is there something that you go to that is a tool for you that you use? Or maybe you have a couple different tools that you grab at that point in time to keep yourself going?
I'll pick a technique.
Okay.
And let's say I'm on the bike. I know, like most people in their pedal stroke, they don't push real hard from what would be like 1:30 to 3 o'clock in a pedal stroke. If the top, if 12 o'clock is top dead center and 6 is the bottom, they kind of coast through from 1:30 to 3. They don't push hard in there. Okay. So I might tell myself for a half an hour, that's all I'm going to dial in on.
Okay.
If it's the run, I might tell myself, okay, you're going to focus on your arm drive, your elbows kicking back, creating a little elastic energy in your pec to pop the arm back forward. And I'll just dial in on that. And then, after a while, I might dial in on different technique.
Is that to take your mind off of the pain? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of good athletes have that. They have the ability to focus on one thing pretty well. And they have the ability to just turn off the discomfort and focus on what they can control. If whether it's Dan or I or anybody who's in a race like that, like you said, if you're thinking about the fact that, you're in an Ironman and you're 10 miles in and you still got to run 16 miles, that could be a pretty overwhelming thing.
Yeah.
But maybe if you're thinking, okay, if I, like, this probably sounds crazy to some people, but some people would be nodding their head like, yeah, I've done that. I might count like 5 perfect arm drives with my right, 5 with my left. And then I go 10, 10, 15, 15. I work my way up to 100. And if I do that, I've covered about 1.25 miles.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
So if I do that 5 times,
right,
I just ran about 6 miles.
Yeah.
Now I can focus on something else.
Right. And like little chunks, it's funny. I actually use that technique when I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't get back to sleep.
Oh,
I take a deep breath in and then so sometimes it's, I start counting backwards from 30, but I have to spell the word 30 and then I have to spell the word 29. Then I have to spell and then lately I've been doing, so I switched over to states.
Yeah.
So I'll pick the West or the South or the, whatever. And I'll just start naming states like up the coast or states up, the Midwest or whatever. And it's funny because usually when we wake up at 2 a.m, our minds are going, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, what do I have to do tomorrow? What whatever, and, worry about things that we don't need to worry about. And so it's the same technique. So basically it takes my mind because I'm focused on thinking of states or I'm focused on spelling, numbers or whatever it is. And I go right back to sleep.
Yeah. You don't make it to I bet you don't make it to 5.
No.
Yeah.
No, isn't that
Right.
crazy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's that
Yeah.
same technique of, I also had talk about different mindsets, right? That you were talking about that sprint. We play beach doubles volleyball on the weekend, and it's been really, really hot and humid here, like terrible. And typically we can play 6 games. And we're literally getting to a point where, in this heat where we'll play 3 games and then look at each other like we
Oh.
can't,
Yeah.
we can't go on, right? And so we have this friend that we play with who's notorious when we're all just like done. We've hit our max. One more game, you guys, one more game, right? And I said, listen, I'll make a deal with you because normally we play to 21. And I said, I'll play to 15, cap at 19 because you usually have to win by 2.
Yes.
And so I'm like, cap at 19. I said, no negotiations. That's it, right? And he's like, oh, come on. And I'm like, no, that's my deal. And so we got on the court. I played like I had just started playing the beginning of the day. You know why? Because I had talked myself into mentally, well, this is just a sprint.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be
absolutely.
easy and quick.
Right.
And it was like, all of a sudden I had more energy. I had,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, it's that mindset. But, so for me, if you would have said, Betsy, you're playing a game to 21, I would have gone in exhausted.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if you would have said, oh, Betsy, you're playing game to 30, I would have been like,
yeah.
I would have been barely able to move on the court. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's so funny how you do that. And,
Yeah, you got to break it into chunks.
Yeah. And that's.
And Dan would break it into chunks. And, we all have our strategy of what kind of chunks you're going to break it into. Like the Ironman Marathon, I'll break into four 10Ks.
Oh,
So
gosh. Okay.
Okay. Now I'm at 24 miles. And then, pardon the term, but nut up for the last 2. But at two to go, you can kind of smell the finish line.
Yeah.
It's drawing you in like a moth.
Yeah.
And so, then if you've made it that far, you're going to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you got to divide it up.
So all of this that we're talking about applies to just life in general and anything that you do in life, right?
Oh, yeah.
So tell me, because you are now coaching so many young kids, which is so amazing, right?
Yeah.
And you get to see all of it, right? You get to see, the sassy kids, the kids that don't think they're worthy, the kids, everything, right?
Everything.
And what's the most rewarding thing for you?
There's a running coach. He's like the running coach of the 70s. His name is Jack Daniels.
Oh,
not a whiskey distiller. Okay. Not a whiskey distiller.
I sometimes run to Jack Daniels.
Yeah. And it can help. But anyway, Jack said, there's kind of like 4 kind of kids you're going to work with. All right. There's a kid with no talent and doesn't want to work hard.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And then there's a kid, he's there because his mom or something told him he had to go out for a sport.
Right. Yep.
And then there's that kid that is really not talented, but he'll do anything you tell him to do.
Mm-hmm.
Super motivated, very coachable. Then there's that kid that's super talented, right? And has no work ethic.
Yeah.
And those are the kids that are the most frustrating to work with because you think, man, if you just applied yourself, if you just worked as hard as this kid who doesn't have the talent and is working hard, you'd be a superstar.
Yeah.
And then
you see that more often than not. And I think it's because of the fact that they've never had to work hard for anything because it's always come naturally to them. They're usually, since a very little kid, they're usually, very athletic and everything, that they try is easy,
Yep. And sometimes those are the kids that are the hardest,
that
are having they're hard to coach, but they know. They know they're riding the fence.
Yeah.
They know they could be that good, but they just can't bring themselves to get there.
Yeah.
To put the work in or to break through barriers or whatever. And then the 4th kid you have is the kid that comes along once a decade, and that kid has got talent coming out of all his pores, and he'll work hard, and he's coachable. And that's the kid that, sets the school records. But the kids that I like working with, everybody likes working with that kid, right?
Right.
That rare kid. But I love working with the kid that is maybe a 5 or 6 on a scale of 1 to 10 in talent, but
has the heart.
He has the heart, and I'm not going to name names, but I'm thinking of a kid right now that just graduated from Arrowhead High School here, and he just fits that mold. He would do whatever you told him. He works hard every day, he brings it. And I know eventually his hard work will be rewarded.
Yeah.
In one way or another, it'll rise to the top.
Even if it's not rewarded in running,
Yeah,
it's going to definitely be
Yeah.
rewarded in life for
absolutely.
sure.
You'd hire him in a second.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because he's never going to show up late. He's going to do the job whatever the job takes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the kid that I love working with, because that's a kid I think I can really make a difference with. I can make that kid believe in himself.
Yeah.
And sometimes the kids that don't have talent but also don't believe in themselves are not getting much. If you can get that kid to break through mentally,
Yes.
then you start to build some confidence, and then get out of the way, because
Right.
they're just going to roll, and that's so rewarding for me.
Yeah. Isn't that fun to watch? I mean,
Absolutely.
So the other, when we were talking about the talented kid that doesn't have maybe the motivation or the discipline or whatever, sometimes that is a mental barrier of that responsibility of being the best
Yes.
is a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they've been quote unquote the best or somewhere near the top.
Right.
And what if they fail? What if they show the effort? Right?
Yeah, then there's an expectation.
Correct. So now if I'm trying my best and I fail, wow, that's too much for them because they've always been the best, right?
Right. Especially, those kids that, the boys that had a mustache in 5th grade, those are the kids that sometimes fall into that because they were really good when they were really young, and they were really good just because they were bigger and faster than everybody because they were mature.
Yes.
And then somewhere around sophomore year, if you're a guy, everybody else starts shooting up and catches that person. And if that person didn't work on their technique or their, whatever aspect of their game they needed to take it to the next level, they get left behind.
Now, is there a lot of sports psychology going on in high school sports where you're at right now?
Not formal sports psychology.
Okay.
I have someone who I recommend kids go to, but I don't make that recommendation real often. It's not like I would send every kid. I don't think every kid needs that.
Right.
And we talk, and I'm not a sports psychologist. I don't pretend to be.
Right.
But I've been doing this for 40 years, and I've been an athlete since I was, I'd say since 6th grade, and I'm 63. So, I've got some pretty good personal experience. I think I can share of, what it takes and what it doesn't for the average kid. But there are those kids that they're talented. Their self-belief isn't where it should be. And I've tried some things and I'm not getting through. And it's not because they're not trying, they have a block. That's when I send them.
Okay.
It has to be a kid that wants it.
Right.
That kid that, like I said before, that knows that talent is there, and they're frustrated because they know they haven't been able to express it, and their nerves get in the way. There's a certain, we call this an arousal level before competition, and you don't want to be, maximal is not optimal. I like to tell the kids. And so you want to be ready. If you're not a little nervous, you're not ready. But then there's that nervous that's maximal, where they've been in the porta potty 5 times.
I was going to say almost paralyzing. Yeah.
Yeah. They've been in the porta potty 5 times. They can hardly breathe. They, they talk themselves out of racing well.
Right.
And as a coach, it's there, and it's very frustrating because you want to help them break through that mental barrier, and you just can't. Those are the kind of kids I would send to a sports psychologist because they want the desire to be better is there.
Right.
And they're not being forced into the sport. I think that too could be, sometimes there's a kid where everybody else thinks they should do this sport, and
because
they
they
don't
have
think
the
so.
physique or the talent or whatever. It doesn't matter if they don't want to be there.
Do rock climbing instead.
Yeah.
That's the kind of kid I would say, go rock climb. You know, if you don't love this, go rock climb. But if a kid loves it and they have the talent and they, their anxiety or whatever is getting in the way of their performing well, then I think that's a kid I would send to a sports psychologist.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also interesting after coaching for so many years, and I've had players come up to me and say, well, how come, you know, you're hard on me, but you're not hard on her? And I said, well, because listen, I have to treat all of you differently because you're all different individuals and
Yeah.
you all respond differently. I said, when you're out on the court and I yell at you, I said, how do you respond? And she said, so she looked right at me and she said, well, it gets me going. Like it hypes
Yeah.
me up and I'm like
Absolutely.
ready to go. Right. And I said, yeah. I said, but Susie over there, when I yell at her, what happens? Oh, she breaks down in tears. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why during a game,
Right.
I can't yell at her. I have to, you know, call a timeout, bring her out of the game, talk to her nicely on the bench, right? Whatever. There's a whole different, you know, plan for her because she responds differently, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think if you're a good coach, you're okay with doing that, right? You
Yep.
know, there's
Yep.
no one size fits all when there's coaching. I mean, you're going to lose half your team if, you know, you think there's a one size fits all.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean,
think I can come down harder on, you know, this is a generalization, but generally in my experience, I can come down harder on most guys. And I'm not a yeller than I can on a girls team. Like I found out pretty quick that when I coached girls swimming, you know, if I lit up the room, they're shutting down,
yep.
not going to listen to me, you know. Like I remember a pivotal moment one time where I was coaching girls swimming and it was like 2 days before the sectional meet. These are high school girls, and their mind was anywhere but. It might have been homecoming week.
Oh gosh.
And so they were just chatty. I couldn't get them to settle down. Beginning of practice, you know, and I was tempted to just, you know, light them up, start yelling, and I knew better. By that time, I knew better, and so I remember I just was I sat on the block, the starting block, and for like 90 seconds, I said nothing, absolutely nothing, and by about 45 seconds, it was getting awful quiet. By a minute, you could have heard a pin drop, and then I let another 30 seconds go by, you know, and then I just really calmly said, you know, sectionals are in 2 days. Where are you guys at? You know, and all of a sudden I had their attention. And that was a really good lesson for me because, boy, we had a great practice that day. But if I'd have yelled at them,
Right.
I'd have shut them down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. You got to know who you're working with.
Oh, girls are, sorry, girls, but they are difficult. They have ups and downs, and you never know how they're walking in to the gym that day or, you know, on the track that day or whatever. You have no idea what you're getting that day. And it's always interesting to try to, you know, figure it out and hope for the best. But I sat a volleyball team down one time and I said, I took them into the office and I said, everybody sit down. And I said, the only person that's going to talk this entire time is going to be me. I said, there'll be no interjections from you. I said, there'll be no questions, no comments. You're all just going to sit and listen to me now. Because girls love to talk back, love to defend themselves, love to, you know.
Yeah.
And I was fed up and I had something to say and I was, you know, and it basically was, don't bring your personal stuff to the practice. We're here to practice.
Yep.
Leave it at the door.
Yeah.
You know, if you're really having a hard time with something and you need to talk to me after practice, that's great. You know, I'm here for you, but we're not doing it on the court. We're not having, you know, problems with each other because on the court, we're just volleyball players.
Yeah.
And you got to leave that stuff behind. And I think that's true for any sport, you know?
Right. Yeah. I've always run, anybody who's ever been involved in any program that I've coached would tell you, you know, oh, Coach Dwight, he starts exactly on time. And if you think you're getting out early, that would be some kind of a rare gift because it's just not going to happen very often, you know? And so my practices tend to be wire to wire. That doesn't mean I'm crushing kids the whole time, but there's no downtime.
Yeah.
Ever. And so, and kids know that, you know, I think I don't have discipline problems. I don't, et cetera, because I think kids know I have a plan and I'm going to execute it and there's not going to be any time for them to screw around.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and I don't get any pushback on that.
Well,
so,
because if you're consistent and disciplined with it, they will learn to be consistent and disciplined with it too, right? But if you're willy-nilly all over the place, like sometimes you start later and sometimes you go longer and sometimes you end early and sometimes you screw around in the middle of practice and, whatever. That's what you know what I'm saying? There's no structure, there's no boundaries. And so that's how they're going to react then too. I mean, it's like raising kids, right? I mean, if you raise kids without boundaries or structure, that's what you're going to get from them,
Yeah. And the kids know that, and again, I'm not the perfect coach. Yeah. Every day I say, well, I wish I would have done that different,
Yeah.
But the kids know I have a plan, but they don't necessarily know what the plan is on that specific day. So I think by being, I have structure. They know I'm going to work on specific things, but they don't know exactly what that is every day. So if I'm not predictable, they don't know what's coming next. Because when kids always know what comes next, then they start to get sideways.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what he's doing next.
Right.
No, they don't know what I'm doing next. So
they always have to be paying attention then.
Yeah, and that's part of, there are a lot brighter people than me, but that's part of being a coach for over 40 years is, I got a few options rolling around in my head, and so I'm going to stay the course as far as what we want to accomplish, but I can do that in a fairly a bunch of different ways because I've been doing this for a while.
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So you also do fitness coaching for people. So
yeah, I do.
Yeah. So, I mean, to anybody who comes to you, like if I came to you and said, I just want to gain some muscle, or I do want to gain some money. I don't know that you can help me
don't
with
we
that,
all?
but gain some muscle, or, I want to, have more endurance, or I want to, whatever it is, I want better balance or whatever. I mean, and you'll basically take the whole gamut of people.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to, I want them to tell me what their desired result is,
Yep.
So what do you hope to get out of this? Obviously I want a timetable, SMART goals.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. And so, how are we going to get there, and what's that look like for you? I want to draw out of the average person, what is fitness to you? If I'm fit, I can do fill in the blank, you know, and that's, I tell people, I think that we have this measure of fitness. Well, everybody should run. If you can run, you're really fit. And I'm not all about that.
Yeah.
There's a million ways to get fit. I want to find out what works for that person, what they'll be willing to do. And if I find that, then we can work with that. And that'll be motivating for them. I really don't want them to do something that they don't want to do. Now, sometimes I'll say, I think we should do that because, particularly if somebody has some kind of injury history, they've got, a history of a knee issue, and we really need to strengthen around that to be able to get to here. I might say, okay, as long as it doesn't hurt, we got to do that exercise. But I want them to be part of that program. I want them to be able to buy in. I think that's super important, to get them to buy in and see the process. And if they can see that, then, we're going to have good consistency.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. You're just talking about, that basically everybody can work out at some level, right?
Absolutely.
And so, the thing that would frustrate me the most is when I had somebody say to me, well, I'm supposed to have my hip replaced, but my doctor won't replace my hip until I lose so many pounds, but I can't lose any weight because I can't work out. And I'm like, why can't you work out? Well, because my hip it hurts all the time.
Yeah.
I said, have you tried swimming?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you tried maybe just doing upper body stuff for a while? Just burning calories, building muscle,
Absolutely.
and all of a sudden you get this, no more excuses type of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the most, what would you say has been maybe one of your biggest challenges? Just as far as like,
I can't walk into their house.
Okay.
And put a padlock on their refrigerator. I can't go I could go through the grocery store with them and say, no. Get that out of the cart.
How
You
many
know?
people do you know that because they ate a salad that day, think they ate healthy for the day, even though everything else that they ate that day was
Yeah.
like terrible? They went to McDonald's, they ate some donuts, but they
Right.
had a salad.
Yeah.
So I
Or
ate healthy.
I get the opposite too. I get some guy who comes in and he says, "Oh, I had this heavyweight dark beer over the weekend. Man, I shouldn't have had that beer. I'm going to put on weight over the weekend." I'm going, if you think that one beer put on the weight, it was the 35 chicken wings you ate with the beer that put on the weight, and the 4 brats you had, and then the leftover brats you had the next day because, we live in the upper Midwest and
Right.
you don't put food to waste up here. So, yeah, it wasn't the beer.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that's what I find that frustrating, where I have clients who will come in and they'll work really hard for me in sessions. I don't have really anybody that I can think just dogs it. But again, they go home and they make enough nutritional errors to,
Yep.
you just cannot outrun your fork.
Yeah. No. And
I've had people that are training for Ironman that put on weight.
oh, wow.
Yeah, because you can't outrun your fork. You
Yeah.
can eat well beyond about anything you can burn off.
And
so
it is funny though how people can't. Well, I here's the thing. It's they can put 2 and 2 together and figure that out. It's just that they don't want to, because for a lot of people that are eating those foods, it's such a comfort to them.
mm-hmm.
And then you have, of course, the justification of, well, I ran 10 miles today, or I had a really hard workout at the gym,
Mm-hmm.
so I burned all these calories, so now I can go home and eat,
Yeah.
the stuff that comforts me, right?
Right.
The burger, the donuts, the, whatever. And I think that's your biggest discipline right there, is just learning how to eat healthy. Like if you went up in my pantry right now, I know it's super boring, but I don't have anything that would resemble like a sweet treat.
Uh-huh.
I don't have cookies up there. My sister came to watch my dogs one day and she's like, "Oh my God." She said, "You don't have anything sweet in your pantry." Nothing. I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And
Yeah.
it's part of it is because a long time ago, I was never really into sweets as a kid, like candy and things like that. But
Right.
trust me, I like my donuts. I like my ice cream. I like my cookies, whatever.
Yeah.
And I taught myself not to even buy them, right? Because if I
Right.
buy them, then there's going to be that temptation when I have that weakness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of, again, I worked out really hard this morning. I can have 4 cookies or 5 cookies, or maybe, normally maybe I only have 2, but today I'm going to have 5 because, I'm going to treat myself, or, I'm going to reward myself because I finished this task, or, you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
like
I
there's
do.
so many. So don't have it in your cupboard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are individuals that, I could have cookies in the house and I might have one.
Yeah, that's
and
that's how I am now.
Or
but yeah.
I always have dark chocolate in the house, and I'll break off a little piece of dark chocolate after supper and suck on it while I help with dishes or whatever, and I can have that. And I'm not disciplined in everything in my life. I'm not the perfect human being, but there are licensed dietitians and others in that field who say, there are no forbidden foods. And like you just alluded to, I think there are foods that should never end up in someone's grocery cart because they don't have the ability to discipline themselves to stop.
Right. They don't have the right relationship with that food.
Right. My brother-in-law is a really successful man, and I have ultimate respect for him, and I really like him. And he, by his own admission, says, my sister-in-law, his wife, she can have 2 gummy bears and put them away, and he's doing work into the evening, and he does some really heady work, and he'll just keep chowing on those. So I said, hey, here's the deal. Right when you're done with supper, and I'll tell other people this, when you are done with supper, you go brush your teeth immediately.
Yes.
Immediately, because you get rid of that sensation that you want to keep eating. You get satiety by brushing your teeth and you shut it down. Not many people start eating again in the evening after they brush their teeth.
Right. That's true. That is
Yeah.
true.
You think the other, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the other trick that I had was, you know what a ramekin is? It's like a little tiny bowl. It's only about this big.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so I thought to myself, the problem is you take the bag of chips to the couch, the whole bag. Okay. You have no idea how many you've eaten because you're just eating them without paying attention. Right.
Yeah.
And so if you put them in a ramekin, nuts,
Yeah.
chips, whatever your little snack is. And then say to yourself, when it's gone, I'm not going to fill it up again. That's it. This is it. And so you could do something like that with gummy bears, but maybe smaller, like, right? Maybe, a shot glass or whatever,
Right.
and this is how many I can fit in there. I mean, he might stack them up somehow because they are
Yeah.
kind of sticky, but,
Then
yeah,
maybe you
just,
savor them then,
Right.
Instead of just chowing them,
Right.
maybe you
Eat
keep
'em
them in your
slower
mouth
and
et cetera. I the thing I run into today too, that, probably was not a problem 50 years ago. And we all have read this, but there's so much fact in it. And that is, if you don't move all day, you have so little room to have any nutritional sins.
yes.
And there's a lot of people today that are, in
Sedentary.
a place, in
Yeah.
a setting like you and I are right now, in a basement with screen, and they don't move
Yeah.
except to go to the bathroom. And a part of the problem there too is they don't eat breakfast. They almost eat nothing for lunch. By the time supper rolls around, they're looking at the leather in their shoe and thinking, I could start chewing on that. And then they eat like a ravenous wolf. Then they flop into a food coma on the couch, and they don't sleep well.
Yep.
Because they ate so much before bed. Then they wake up in the morning, they need a lot of stimulants to get themselves rolling. So they get the
cortisol is like
Yeah.
through the roof at this point, and
Yes.
cortisol is all your belly fat and everything else. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And their cortisol, like you said, that's so high, they need a big hit of caffeine and sugar to get them going in the morning. And then they ride on that until they get another hit of caffeine and sugar. And then they just repeat the cycle day after day. And it's just super unhealthy.
Yeah.
So I try to get to those people to eat 5 times a day.
And the other thing that we talked about before was the knowing your body and knowing. So we were talking about it in reference to doing a triathlon. What nutrition do you need before, during, after, right? Okay. And each person is different. There is no, again, one size fits all that,
Right.
this is what you should do. And it's the same thing just for everyday eating.
Yeah.
For what might work for me isn't going to work for you.
Yeah.
And so you really have to start listening to your body and are you the type of person that needs more fiber? Are you the type of person that needs more protein, more,
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? And really figuring out what that is for you. And, because I think we've all done it, right? We've all done some kind of fad where, I think I was telling you where I decided to do the high protein, low carb diet. And I could barely keep my eyes open during the day.
Yeah.
I was exhausted all the time. And everybody kept telling me protein's going to give me energy, right? I'm like, it's not giving me any energy.
No.
And
that's where people that don't know
yeah.
are given advice.
Well, and here's the other thing too. You can only process so much protein a day anyway, right?
Yes.
And so I love these people that are putting scoops and scoops of the protein powder.
Yeah.
They're you may as well just burn some dollars over a flame too.
Absolutely.
Because, that protein powder, your body's only going to be able to absorb from that smoothie so much of that protein.
Right.
And then the rest of it's being peed and pooped out of
Exited.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
it's going to exit your body.
Yeah.
And so, so it's, it's just kind of figuring out what that formula is for you. And if you're true to yourself, if you really listen to your body, are you really hungry, or are you emotional eating right now? Are you thirsty? A lot of us eat when we're actually dehydrated. We really should be drinking rather than eating. There's so much of that going on, but explain, for people that are athletes, kind of nutritional, like how to eat during a competition. Cause I always have this problem too. I never, and I feel like every day for me is different. What do I eat when I'm playing volleyball? Right.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that's when I eat my sugar.
Yeah. And you need it.
Yeah.
During that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, anytime you're doing an activity, no matter what that is, that's over about 40 minutes, you start to drain your body's natural glycogen stores. The carbohydrate you eat is processed into a sugar in a usable form to fuel your muscles. That's a real simple way to put it.
Yeah.
And after about 40 minutes of pretty continuous activity, those levels start to drop. And then we need something. because especially there's a correlation between the intensity of the activity and how much fat you can burn. People think, well, I'll just burn fat. Yeah, you can burn fat if you're moving really slow. All right. But in general, people can't burn fat. The higher your heart rate, the less fat you're going to be able to burn.
Right.
And so you need to replace that glycogen with more carbohydrate, whether that, and you got to find a usable form to do that.
So so give me some usable forms, and then also tell me, does it really matter what it is if it's in a usable form?
I think, I'm sure there are people out there that are going to listen to this and say, well, there's this specific type of sugar that you should eat during competition and this you shouldn't. And this kind of OS, any sugar ends with an OSE, and avoid this OS and eat that, and et cetera. But I don't think it matters much. I think what matters is that you find what works for you. A real famous triathlon coach said once, we're an experiment of one when it comes to sports nutrition. And so you have to really figure out what works for you. Like for instance, Dan Trewicki, he could drink Gatorade or whatever the sports beverage was, served at the course. Whatever Ironman you're doing, they're handing you a certain sports beverage. And forgive me right now, but I don't remember what the official sports beverage of Ironman is right now.
Powerade, or
it's not Powerade. No. I forget what it is. So my
Body
apologies, but I can't remember right now. It's just not Gatorade anymore. But you got to figure out, does that beverage work for you that they're supplying on the course? You better buy it in advance to figure it out, because if you're going to be grabbing 5 bottles of that on the bike and downing it, and your system doesn't handle that, then you better have a plan B. But Dan had the unique ability to be able to do like a gel, carbohydrate gel, the brand name goo, and down it with sports beverage. Now, a lot of people, that's like too high octane all at one time. And they'll get a big bellyache.
I was going to say, that would have made me sick.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of people sick. It didn't make Dan sick. So that made it easy for us to plan his nutrition, because I didn't have to say, well, you're going to alternate. You're going to do a goo at 20 minutes, and you're going to do it with water, and then you're going to do Gatorade, and then you're going to do a solid, like a bar, a carbohydrate bar, etc. And that's going to be the plan. You're going to follow that plan and have this many calories you're going to intake per hour for each hour you're on the bike, and then, we're going to shut this down 20 minutes before you get off the bike to give that carbohydrate and those fluids some ability to uptake, stomach to empty, so you're not running on an empty stomach or a full stomach when you get off the bike. So there's planning and timing to all of this. And like I said, you're an experiment of one, and some of that is how much you take in is based on metabolism, body size, sweat rate. Like Dan is a fairly heavy sweater, but not crazy.
Okay.
Dan has a friend that went to Kona with him when we went last fall, and this individual, his sweat rate is off the charts. And I at one time coached that person, and we were at like 33 to 35 ounces an hour he needed to take in warm weather.
Whoa.
Yeah. And he sweat every bit of that out.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. But
a lot of people don't drink that in one day.
I know, but he needed that if he was really
crazy.
Working hard on the bike in a warm and humid climate.
Yeah,
and he might not need that biking outside at 50 degrees.
Right.
But I was biking behind this person. This guy brought up in our bike ride last Saturday for some reason. I said, once I was biking behind this person, and I looked up, it's starting to sprinkle. And I realized, no, it's not sprinkling. It's the guy in front of me is sweating so much that it's coming back on me like it's a shower. So I said, I don't think I'm going to be here anymore. I go past him, Right, yeah. But anyway, you're an experiment of one. And so you got to figure out, okay, what's my sweat rate? How much do I need to take in? If you're a 115 pound female, maybe you're taking in 225 calories an hour. If you're a 180 pound male, you might be taking in 375 to 400 calories an hour. And if people are following sports nutrition right now, you're seeing that those Tour de France riders are taking in about 400 calories, an hour, of 90 to 100 grams of carbohydrate an hour, every
Wow.
hour.
Wow.
And they're doing it mostly in the form of goo. I mean,
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy, because if you think about that, you're doing 4 or 5 goos an hour for 5 hours.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's easy to get. But those are the things you got to figure out.
Yeah.
What do you tolerate? And you want to take in as much as you can, absorb.
Right.
And that's what you got to figure out. That's the hard part. How much can because you can take in more, but you're going to get sick.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You need to use it. I was going to say, I would play up grass triples tournament, and it was always hot. It's in July, right? Super, super hot, sunny, terrible. And I was trying Gatorade because in my head, I needed the electrolytes, right? I needed, and I couldn't do it. I would take a couple sips. Okay, see, I'm never going to be sponsored by Gatorade either. Starbucks, Gatorade, they're never going to sponsor me. But I don't like Gatorade even on any day, right? But I was like, I'm going to try this because I know my body needs it, right? And it did not work for me at all. So the next time we went to play, I brought up, this is going to sound crazy, I brought up the little pre-packaged mandarin oranges in fruit juice.
Oh, sure.
And so I'd drink the fruit juice and then eat the mandarin oranges out of it. And that's what worked for me. Gatorade, not so much. Now, Gatorade probably would have been easier, because it's everywhere. But I was like, I loved my little mandarin cups, and, so I'd get my fruit juice and my mandarin, the fiber and the, whatever. And that worked for me. But yeah, it's funny just finding out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And, but, we get so influenced by, some pro athlete, right? Or the commercials we see on TV, endorses this product.
Right.
And then you think, well, my God, look at them. If Gatorade does that,
Yeah, Gatorade's not doing that.
Right.
Mom and Dad did that.
Right. But that's like what, and that's what they want you to believe in the advertising, right?
Absolutely.
I'm going to become a better athlete if I drink Gatorade. But yeah, so, oh gosh, now I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask you a question.
I think there's just a lot of things that work.
Yeah.
For people, and it doesn't have to be necessarily, and a lot of sports nutritionists will say that, hey, if, maybe not for the run, but like for the bike, peanut butter sandwich.
Oh, yes.
I've eaten a lot of peanut butter sandwiches in my time. Long bike rides where you might be doing 3 long loops, coming back to the car or the van or whatever, stop, refuel your water, eat a peanut butter sandwich.
I should go back to peanut butter sandwiches.
Tastes a whole lot better than and I'm not against carbohydrate bars or energy bars, but sometimes just a plain peanut butter sandwich tastes a lot better.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so and sometimes you have to also, I think, especially in these longer races or longer events, maybe you're doing something that's, multiple matches over a day. You got to find something too that makes you, that settles with you, but also that you like.
Right.
I've got a really good friend, Cameron, and he would eat these peanut butter cookies.
Oh, that's
on the
good
bike.
Too.
Now
Yeah.
wasn't his exclusive form of energy intake, right? But he'd have a couple along.
Yeah.
Because it made him happy.
So that's so funny that you should say that, because years ago, went to go climb Mount Rainier. Okay. And so when you get ready to go climb Mount Rainier, if you've never done it before, you go to REI.
Oh, sure.
And, and you're getting the, the goo type of stuff and the bars and the dehydrated, meals. Cause, we camp
right
at like 10,000 feet or whatever, right? Before we go the rest of the way overnight and all this stuff. Right. So the guide, I look over the guide, we're eating our just absolutely terrible. It doesn't taste good, but we're like, choking it down. Right. And I look over at the guide and he's eating a Snickers and drinking a soda.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And he said, oh yeah. He goes, I learned a long time ago that you just need energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so he said, you eat what is good, what you want to eat.
Right.
Otherwise, you know, because you guys right now are suffering and you're not even going to finish that bar, right? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to finish this bar, you know. That night we had dehydrated food. I took, you know, you put the hot water in it, right?
Yep.
I took one bite and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to throw up. Okay. So thankfully I had brought the little Quaker Oats, you know, instant
sure.
oatmeal, like
Yeah.
the brown sugar and cinnamon or whatever
Yep.
it is, right?
Yeah.
That was a savior. I don't know what made me pack it, but thank God I did, because that I could eat, right?
Right.
Now, did it seem like it had all the nutrition I needed? Absolutely not.
No.
But it was something. It was better than nothing, you know.
The body is more marvelous at using, again, you have to find something that's not going to make you sick to your stomach. But if you found that, the body is marvelous at using whatever you give it, you know, as calories. I had a similar experience where we were a group of 11 of us. We're doing some really intense bike training in the Ozark Mountains, you know, 90, 120-mile rides in the Ozarks. And these guys were really good cyclists, or 2 triathletes along myself and one other guy. And we were like 90 miles into a 125-mile ride in the middle of Ozarks in this little convenience store. You know, we walked in with all our Lycra and, you know, I thought, whoa, you know, these people probably never seen anything like us. But I found out a lot of cyclists there.
Okay.
So they had seen people like us and they liked us. But this was back, you know, when you didn't carry a credit card. This was back in like maybe 98, something like that. And, you know, I had not enough cash. And I remember looking at labels and I thought, how much sugar can I buy to get me through, you know, this like 35 miles we got to go.
Right.
And I was just bonking, you know,
So you
blood
bought some
sugar's
Pixie
low.
Sticks?
No, I bought a Coke and a Snickers bar.
See? Yeah.
And I remember saying to the guys, I said, okay, we're going to down this. I said, but there's no chit chat because we better get going because this is going to burn off like rocket fuel.
Yep.
And if we stand around, it's going to be gone. So we better be moving as soon as we eat this sugar, you know? And so, and we made it back.
I would always tell my volleyball players during a tournament, you guys eat good all day.
Mm-hmm.
I said, before that last game, you can eat whatever sugar you want. You can have your cookies. You can have, I said, because you're going to burn it off and be done. You
Absolutely.
know? But if you're eating your sugar in the beginning, that's going to be a high and then a low, a high and then a low all day long, you know? And so I'm like, just save that. I'm like, I'm glad you guys brought it. It's fine. I'm like, but either save it for the bus afterwards or for the last game, you know, then you can have it before the last game and, you know, it'll be in your system long enough to, you know, last you that game. But yeah, I mean, that's what people need to look at is, again, when are you you know, when are you loading yourself with sugar, you know?
And I think for some people, you know, we're such a diet conscious society. I've had to have conversations with athletes that I've coached. And basically the conversation was, you know, the time to diet is not on a 60-mile bike ride. No. You need, you know, and I don't want to eat because I'm trying to lose weight. And I go, well, you're not going to make it. You know, this is not the time to be on a diet. Time to be on a diet is, or to watch your nutrition. I don't even like diets, but time to watch your nutrition is, you know, from 6 to 9 tonight. Right. You know, but right now, you better be taking in that amount of calories an hour that we talked about. Otherwise, you're going to bonk.
Yep. And college age girls. Oh, I had that problem all the time.
Yeah.
They would, you know, all of a sudden I'd look at them like they're turning white on the court. I'm like, and I learned I had these liquid IV packets, you know, and so I would have a bunch of liquid IV packets and then a bunch of, you know, granola bars or some kind of energy bar, right, in my backpack. Because these girls, and they never got it. They never got it because they were so hell-bent on they had to lose weight. They had to lose weight. They would show up at these tournaments, and it's grueling. You know, you're playing all day long, right? You know? Right. And they wouldn't have proper nutrition because they were on a diet. Yeah. What did you eat this morning? Nothing. You ate nothing before we started playing today. You know, and they'd have to come out of the game because they were about to pass out on the floor. Yeah. You know, and I'd hand them, you know, the liquid IV and, you know, and sometimes I just had plain old M&Ms like here, you know, because some of them would, you know, you see them start shaking, right? And I'm like, you know, down some M&Ms and, you know, get back out on the court or whatever. But yeah, but they never got it. Yeah. They were, you know, it's so funny how they don't understand that nutrition is preparation.
Oh,
That's what
absolutely.
happens. That's what happens like for the full week or the months or whatever before the event. During the event, like you said, you eat what you need to eat to fuel your body, right? But if you need to lose weight, you do that in the off season.
Yeah.
You don't do that the day of,
And I think we're finding, that with a lot of sports right now, they're finding that being super, super lean isn't necessarily the best thing.
Yeah.
I know even with the Tour de France riders now, they're talking about, they're eating more during events so they don't get so emaciated, during the 21 days. And they, I lost my train of thought here, but they are finding out that a heavier rider isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
And I remember a conversation via YouTube video that I watched with Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Iden, who are these very good triathletes. They're both from Norway. And they said, people come and train with us, and after about 3 days, they just fall off the face of the earth. And they said, and this is because they don't eat enough and they don't eat at the right time. These guys don't hold back. And they're not enormous, but they're not skinny mini, either of them. And,
right.
And they were Christian Blumfeld probably is still widely considered top 3 triathletes in the world, and he's not a skinny mini guy.
Do you think that's part of the reason why I've seen in the press lately, everybody's talking about triathletes and long distance runners, things like that, that it just is so bad for your body over time? But do you think it's more the combination of the intense exercise plus the fact that these people are trying to keep themselves so lean that it's just not healthy, that your body's just constantly struggling,
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think if you're drawn to that kind of event, and I would put myself in that camp.
Yeah.
By my own admission, you're probably the kind of person also who's pretty good at pushing yourself through things you probably shouldn't do. So in other words, your body's saying, yeah, I know you got this planned today, this interval set, but right now you're really feeling like,
you should take a day off.
You should take a day off.
Let your body recoup.
And you just and you're the type of personality that just blows right through that.
Okay.
And so I think that is hard on the body.
Right.
When you're doing that for 20, 30 years, you're not doing that twice. You're doing that pretty consistently for 20, 30 years. I think that's pretty hard on the body.
Yeah.
And
Well, and the body needs fat.
Absolutely.
And
hormones and all kinds of things don't work well if you don't have fat.
Right. You need this for hormone regulation. And they're now starting to come out and admit that especially older people should not be on cholesterol lowering drugs because our brains need cholesterol. And so there's this whole thing now debunking the whole cholesterol,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I just know that, I just talked to somebody the other day, and this person, the cholesterol, they increased his cholesterol medication by 400%. So he's on 10 milligrams, they raised it to 40. So I think that's 400%.
Yeah.
And he's having a lot of muscle aches and pains and a lot of, and I said, well, and this was a conversation that went back to nutrition. And I said, you should make it the goal, your number one goal over the next year, to get off that stuff.
Right.
Because I think there's a way to do it.
Yes.
And you might have to go to a nutrition plan that's a little more extreme than some people.
Right.
But there's a way to get off.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least to get it down to maybe 5 milligrams instead of 40.
Right.
And get off diabetic he's also on medication for diabetes.
Type 2 diabetes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Metformin. And so I said, there's a way to get off of those two things with the nasty side effects, but you just have to
There absolutely is. And it's
Brush your teeth at 6 o'clock at night. That's what you need to do.
you might need to brush your teeth at 4:30, but who's counting? No, and it's true, but it's so hard to face that reality for a lot of people, I mean, there's things that all of us do that we probably shouldn't do, but that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, and again, if he's looking here instead of here, it's super overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know if he needs to lose weight. I'm just assuming type 2 diabetes probably does. But okay, so if you say like, oh my gosh, I've got to lose 60 pounds, that's a lot. That's looking forward. That's overwhelming, right?
Absolutely.
If you're saying I need to go from 40 milligrams down to 5 milligrams of this medication, again, that's a huge, like, looking way forward, right? Instead of taking it in little chunks, like what's the first thing? I used to tell clients, I'm like, they'd say, well, I haven't been losing any weight and we work out 5 days a week and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, first of all, you probably don't need to work out 5 days a week. I'm glad that you guys are here. It's great. I love to have you. But work out 3 days a week, super hard with me. And, that's good enough, right? I said, and then on your off days, maybe do some yoga or something different, But I said, think of one thing nutritionally, because like you said, you can't outrun your fork, right? And I would ask them, I'm like, how much sugar do you intake every day? Well, I get a big Coke every morning. Okay, can we change that to maybe black coffee or maybe coffee with honey or something? You know what I'm saying? Like, let's transition out of the terrible real, because it's not Diet Coke, it's Coke, So that's I don't know how much sugar is in a Coke, but it's a lot, okay?
It's 44 grams and 12 ounces.
Okay, there you go. So And I said, let's just change that up. Or maybe 2 days a week you don't do it. And then maybe next time it's 3 days a week you don't do it. Whatever it is, but take something like you said, that small chunks of things that you can do to start, getting yourself in the right direction. Because I think it's so overwhelming when somebody looks at you and says, you've got to lose 60 pounds. So what you need to do is you need to, get rid of all your sugar. You've got to, eat only, lean protein and some vegetables. And, people are like, well, that sounds terrible. My life is, their first reaction is my life is going to be terrible, you know?
I think, I like to tell them, you didn't wake up one day and go, oh my gosh, overnight, I put on 60 pounds last night,
Right.
Like that was a methodical thing. And I wouldn't probably put it this way to them, but the fact of the matter is you overate on a really consistent basis.
Yeah.
It takes 3,500 extra calories to put on a pound. You put on 30 pounds, do the math, that's a lot of calories. And that you put that on in a methodical way, and it's going to come off in a methodical way, unless you do something that's probably unhealthy.
Right.
But gee, if we can eliminate 3,500 calories in a week somehow through diet and exercise, then you're going to lose a pound a week. And people forget that. I always ask them, okay, how many weeks are there in a year? It's just interesting to me how many people will go think about that. You're like, I go, well, there's 52.
Here, let me answer for you.
So if a year from now, I looked at you and you had lost 52 pounds, would you be happy? And they go, oh yeah. I go, well, consistency over time.
And if I told you in a year you're going to lose 52 pounds and you're going to keep it off because you've done it methodically and consistently, and you form new habits, and now it's a lifestyle change. And that's the biggest thing, is it needs to be a lifestyle change.
Absolutely.
It's not short term.
No, this is how we do it now in our house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know I love people. The first thought is when I'm on a diet, well, how long do I have to be on the diet for?
Yeah.
No, diet actually is just what you eat every day, right? So that's considered your diet, right?
Right. Absolutely.
But we've given it a different definition as this, quick fix to lose weight quick. And then we can go back to whatever we did before.
I think it's always interesting how, if somebody starts eating a lot less sugar and they consistently do that over time, all of a sudden, if they have something that's really sugary, it's like overwhelming. And pretty soon, instead of putting, 4 teaspoons of sugar in their coffee in the morning, or a whole whopping load of artificial sweetener in their coffee, if they don't eat sugar for a long time, they put just a little honey in. It's plenty sweet.
Yeah.
I think there's a correlation between the amount you eat and the amount you think you need for things to be sweet. And so we can cut back on that, and pretty soon it becomes the new norm.
And the beautiful thing is that honey has nutritional benefits, right?
Absolutely.
And the other one is 100% pure maple syrup.
Yeah.
It's so good in coffee, and again, has nutritional benefits for you.
Right.
So
this morning, I had oatmeal with maple syrup in it, and my coffee with maple syrup in it, and then some natural peanut butter in my oatmeal, and that's how I normally start my day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And
now, I do have to say, as far as carbohydrates go, I love sourdough toast.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, sometimes I have to tell myself, you're not having any sourdough toast today, but I love sourdough toast. I usually try to pair it, though, with put avocado on it or peanut butter, some kind of protein, So I even this is going to sound crazy, but again, these are substitutes that you can make that still make it delicious, but more nutritious. I get, I think I get it from Good Harvest or something. It's organic applesauce, and it's just apples. It's just Honeycrisp apples. There's no other ingredients in it. And I do a piece of toast with peanut butter and then applesauce. So instead of, I use natural peanut butter or almond butter. And then instead of, jelly, I put applesauce on it.
Yeah.
And it's delicious.
I don't blame people today for being really confused with the whole nutrition.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot of influencers and other people out there who are spouting information, but it's not knowledge.
Right.
It's information.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big difference. And so people will hear things like watermelon isn't good for you because it's got a really high glycemic index.
Oh, I know. Don't you love that?
And so
forget the fiber or the fact that it has iron and lots of water in it.
And likely, not always, but likely you're going to eat that watermelon with something else, right? Maybe you're going to have a chicken breast with it.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Or some stir fry or something like that. You're going to eat it in a meal. So, what else you eat balances out that sugar. It's like if you have your sourdough toast and you put avocado on it, now you got a fat on that, and those things work in conjunction. And so you don't get that spike because you have other things.
Right.
You're not eating a pixie stick, God,
I hate those
alone. We're aging ourselves with pixie sticks.
I know.
We're a Zot.
Oh, yeah, Zots. Well, I used to go to the Five and Dime. I used to ride. Here, I'm going to sound like a grandma now. I used to ride my bike to the Five and Dime with my friends, and you could get 1 cent or 5 cent candies. And so you just come with a bunch of coins and, and then they had the bins and you could take, the wrapped candies out. Yeah. So, that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
So,
But then you rode your bike all the way home. So,
well, okay. If there's anything I can say, right now, and going back to what you said before, is people just aren't getting enough activity, and my big thing now is online schooling. I can't be more angry about online schooling if I tried, especially because if you're paying for 4-year college and your kid is doing their classes on a computer.
Yeah.
Do you know how much you're paying for your kid to be looking at a computer? They're not even using the facility that you're paying for. They're not even they're not even heating a classroom or cleaning a classroom for your kid to go to.
The dorm ain't free.
Yeah. So it's like, my daughter lives with me right now and she's finishing up college and she rarely goes to college.
Yeah.
She's doing it all online. So there's days when her exercise is so minimal. She's not, a big athlete. She doesn't find a lot of joy in, doing exercise. But think about it. If she had to drive down to UWM and park her car and walk to the buildings, go to her class, God forbid we socialize with people in person, wouldn't that be nice if they did that again and maybe make some friends, and then walk back to your car and, at least that's some exercise, right?
Absolutely.
It's, but it's just ridiculous today that we sit and look at our computers all day long and people aren't getting exercise. We were constantly, we left the house in the morning when we were kids. I know now I'm going to sound really old again, but we didn't come home until we were hungry. We came home, got off our bikes or stopped kicking the ball or stopped, going in the creek and screwing around in the creek. We didn't stop that until we were hungry. And then we went home and we ate lunch and then we went right back
Yeah,
outside.
you went right back outside until it was dark.
Right. And then
Yeah.
you came home again because now it was time to eat again, and you
Yeah.
went to bed. And that's what you did. You came home from school. I remember coming home from school. First of all, we had recess. That's the other thing that they started to kind of get rid of. And, there's not really active recesses anymore either, But, we played sports all the time at recess. Okay. We did recess all the way up until 8th grade. And, but you'd come home after school and, I'd eat like 2 bowls of cereal, which probably really bad for me, but I was really hungry. And then you went right back out again.
Yeah.
You either met your friends up to play or, you went to soccer practice, and I would ride my bike, to soccer practice a lot because it was close enough and I lived in Tosa, so I could ride my bike. But, yeah, we just don't have that anymore.
Well, I think part of it is, I think there's a lot of distrust, and people are afraid that if they let their kids outside, the boogeyman or somebody's gonna.
Right.
So even when kids do get out and they do play, a lot of times the parents supervise the play. So they're not letting the kids play. They're saying, we're going to play date and we're going to figure out for you what you're going to do.
Right.
And there's going to be an end to it. There's be a finite number of hours or minutes that you play. And then when mom and dad are ready to go home, then we're going to stop playing.
Right.
And it's not like, you indicated or we talked about where, we just disappeared and there was,
right.
We just played and played and played.
And we got to discover on our own. We got to be independent. We got to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Kids aren't allowed to do these things anymore. And I think there's this fake maturity because they're not truly like we matured in a different way because again, we were given that independence. We fended for ourselves. We, whatever, and now there's, they talk about the helicopter parent, right? And the parent does everything for them and the parent tells them that they're great all the time and, whatever. And they seem like mature kids, but they really aren't. And they're not really ready to face the world.
Yeah.
And we see all this anxiety and depression and,
Absolutely. And here's how I see this show up in the kids I am coaching right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids I coach, I love them. They're great. Every one of them. I have a special spot for every kid. And they're just unique. They're individuals. They're not peas in a pod. Thank God. Every year, it seems like kids are less confident.
Yeah.
No, maybe not every kid. But a lot of kids are not confident, and I think that's because they're not given those opportunities to do things that. They're completely on their own,
right?
To make mistakes, to figure it out,
to be scared every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And to maybe, when I was like 11 years old, I was put on a International B tractor, learned how to drive a manual transmission. I think I ran it into the gas tank when I first started but it would have been really bad to have 600 gallons of gas spill on the ground, but thank God it didn't. And then I got sent out by myself, go rake this field. And then I could do that. Well, then you could now rake the big coulee and you'd be on a side hill, and maybe you're feathering the right brake only because the tractor's sliding downhill. And, part of that was probably a little dangerous.
Yeah.
But you figured it out, and then pretty soon you gain confidence, and you were, okay, I can do that. Well, now I can do this.
Right. You push past that fear because that was probably a little bit frightening at first.
Oh, yeah, and maybe you had to figure it out on the go a little bit.
Yeah.
And nobody had time to tutor you with absolutely everything. They just kind of sent you out there and hoped you'd figure it out. There wasn't, not there was no tutoring. You know, basically you knew how to hook things up and do it. But kids, aren't given the opportunity to figure it out and to fail. And yeah, some of those things were a little bit scary and dangerous. We survived.
Yeah.
and so I wish kids today had the opportunity to do that more.
Yeah.
The other you talked about COVID or homeschooling. You were talking about
yes.
And not homeschooling, but schooling at home.
Yeah,
However you
like online.
Correct.
Online classes.
Right. I just had this aha moment a couple of years ago where I was working with these kids at a practice at a school. I was helping out with a cross-country practice. And we were doing some basic exercises at the end, strength-based exercise, like a side plank and hold,
Okay.
a bridge and hold, just body weight kind of exercises.
Yeah.
And these kids who were freshmen, sophomores, they couldn't do it. And it was just like an aha moment. I thought, wow, kids have always been able to do this. Like, why can't these kids do these basic things? And then it just popped into my head.
Core
Because
does nothing
these
all day.
kids were stuck at home, and their activity for a day during COVID was going from the bedroom to the bathroom to the kitchen, back to their bedroom, where they did online classes and surfed on their phone all day. They maybe only got 300 steps in a day.
Yeah.
And it showed up. It absolutely showed up in athletics.
Yeah.
And I think we're still dealing with that. Kids today have really terrible grip strength. Most kids.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't even think about that.
Oh,
but
yeah. Yeah, I've got kids who they could easily squat with 40-pound dumbbells, but they can't hang on to them.
That's crazy.
It's something like I've never thought about.
Right.
I just grab them, never think about whether I can hang on to them or not. It's a given.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can't. And it's because they've never had to do anything
Manual labor. Yeah.
labor.
Yeah.
And again, that's not a reflection on them as human beings. They're great kids.
Oh, yeah.
I love every one of them, and I'd work with them every day. But unfortunately, this is where society's kind of gone, and I wish we could pull it back.
I know. Wouldn't it be nice? It's funny when we talked about this before, just even chores around the house, and you were talking about, what you did as a kid with the tractor and everything, right?
Yeah.
And when my boys were younger, we had moved from Wisconsin to San Diego, and I made sure before we went there, this was a temporary assignment, not staying there forever, but it definitely became apparent after why I wanted to move back to Wisconsin. After a couple years, the kids looked at me and said, so we had a pretty big yard, and you can get landscaping there for pretty cheap because, they come up from Mexico for the day, and, they do your landscaping for you. And the landscaper would always ask, do you want your lawn mowed? And I would say, no, we mow the lawn ourselves, right? And so the boys had to mow the lawn.
Yeah.
And they couldn't believe it. The boys were like, none of our friends have to mow lawns. None of our friends have to do chores. And I said, yeah, I know, but you're going to. And I'm like, and so we moved back to Wisconsin. And that was one of the big reasons, because I'm like, I know back in Wisconsin that there's still kids mowing lawns, and there's still kids, doing chores and things like that, And so anyway, but as the kids grew up, especially the boys, they said to me, thank you for making us do chores. Because as they became adults, they realized how important that is.
Right.
And and we just don't. And again, you said that fear, right? We're so afraid they're going to get hurt. We're so afraid that that we hover over them, and they shouldn't do that because they might get hurt, and they shouldn't do that because they might get hurt, and and even in the participation awards, right? How are you gaining confidence knowing that everybody got the same award?
Yeah.
That you did not earn that award. Does that give you confidence?
The thing is, in my experience, kids know.
Yeah.
Kids know who's good and who is getting, they know if they're getting rewarded, and they haven't put out an effort, or they're not good.
Right.
And again, kids, they might get good, you never know who's going to blossom. But we think we're doing a favor by giving everybody an award, and the kids know.
Yeah.
They're smart enough to know that they just got a ribbon because they have a heartbeat.
Right.
So
in volleyball, you can do so after you're done with regular play in the tournament, you either make it into the gold bracket, the silver bracket, or the bronze bracket, and then you have your championship playoffs from there, okay? And so, we wouldn't make gold bracket, and usually lose, by 2 points or something, and not make gold bracket, right? And I'd be like, oh my God, right? And you'd hear parents say it, and the kids, some of the kids would say it, and they would say, well, we can still win silver bracket. And I looked at him one day, and I may have gotten a little flack for this because sometimes I don't have a filter, but I looked at him and I said, oh, so you're going to be happy to be the winner of the losers.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're doing. You're going to be the winner of the losers. You didn't make it into the gold bracket. Like gold bracket is what you should be going for. I'll be really proud of you if you still play hard and you gut it out and you win silver bracket. But let's call a spade, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember I'd get so mad because when we did make it into gold bracket and we'd come in second, we would get nothing. No prize, no t-shirt, because they always got t-shirts if you won, right? And so I'm like, well, at least they could give a medal or something to the kids that came in second place, right? Because you're talking like there might be 36 teams and you came in, number 2. That's pretty good, know? No, but you know who got awards? The winner of silver bracket and the winner of bronze bracket. How does that make any sense?
Yeah. Well,
so the number 9th team got something, but the number 2 team didn't get anything.
Yeah. But the kids know.
I know.
I think that's an important detail is your kids know they were second overall.
Right.
If they were second in the gold bracket.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't need another, another trinket at home.
True.
And so,
but it wasn't lost on them that the winner of the silver, the 9th place person got, or the 9th place team got, something. They got the t-shirt, right?
Right.
And it's so funny because it's like the t-shirt's the same a lot of times, right? It's not like it's a different t-shirt. And, and so their big thing was, we go to school this would always crack me up because they couldn't wear a t-shirt to school. Right?
Oh.
That was their big thing. So if you won the tournament, you wore your t-shirt to school, right? So everybody know you won the tournament, right?
Yeah.
And so they would have nothing to wear to school.
Oh,
even though they were the second place
absolutely.
team. You know what I'm saying?
I get
it was, so it was one of those things where I'm like, well, we're celebrating mediocrity and not celebrating the top teams,
Yeah.
Like just celebrate the top 3 teams, with whatever they like best. I think for my kids, it was always a t-shirt. They couldn't care less about the medals. A lot of them wanted to just wear it, right? Because you're not wearing a medal to school. You look ridiculous, So a lot of them like the t-shirts rather than the medals, but it was like, okay, so figure out what, you give the top 3 teams. And if you want to give the winner of silver and the winner of bronze something, just a medal or something, that's great,
Yeah.
But I never understood why we're not celebrating the right accomplishments. You know what I'm saying? It just, didn't make sense to me, but I don't know. Things are different now.
I try to spend time. I spend time every session. The high school kids I'm working with, a lot of them are distance runners, and I work with them in 8 to 10 week sessions when they're not in cross country, not in track. And so I spend time every session, multiple times, talking to them about, what it's going to take to get into the gold bracket every time. Okay. Or, in the case of these kids, how are you going to make sectionals every time? How are you going to make it possible that you compete well every time you compete? Now, not every, if you're looking at runners, not every time you race is it going to be a PR. Nobody does that.
Right.
Nobody gets a personal best every time they run.
Yeah.
But how can you ensure that every time you put your foot on the line, you're going to be a valuable member of your team? You're going to race to the best of your ability that day, and you're going to be somebody that your team can count on, and et cetera. And I said, that's, it's not an accident when people get there.
Right.
But,
right.
So I spend a lot of time talking to them about how to develop strategies, both mental and otherwise. What time do you go to bed? What time do you go to bed the last, 4 nights before?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
How are you going to get, don't keep your phone in your room, right? Turn your phone on silent, leave it somewhere else. Or if you have it in your room, don't have it on your bedside so somebody can't text you at 1 a.m., and screw up your sleep. How are you going to get more recovery? What do you need to do with your nutrition? And I, especially with high school kids, I do not talk to them about eating less. I talk to them about eating good.
Yes,
and fueling. Yeah. You got to fuel. What can you do to fuel better? How can you mentally prepare yourself? what positive affirmations can you write down and read and reread and reread until you own them, and create these strategies so that every time you put that foot on the line, you're going to perform well. Now, again, it may not be your best every time, but you're leaving the door open for it to be your best every time. And that's part of what I want to create for kids, is the ability to be at their best, given the gifts God's given them and how hard they've trained.
Yep.
You're at this point. How can we get you to perform to the best of your ability, whatever that ability is, and really consistently? And when kids do that, then pretty soon confidence builds. And confidence is, you cannot put a price on confidence.
No.
It can be taken away really quick, but it can be built up really quick again if you race consistently, Yeah. And so that's always important to me, whether I'm working with a triathlete or if I'm working with high school kids or whoever. I want to be able to build that ability to consistently perform well.
And again, it's not just in their sport.
No.
It'll carry over to their life. If your friend who's on the, cholesterol lowering medication, if that person applied the same principles of, let's make sure you get enough sleep. Let's make sure you get enough, water during the day.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? It's an entire lifestyle.
It's a wellness journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, these kids that are learning this now, it's going to carry over into the rest of their lives, hopefully, that they're just not going to, stop running someday and just, fall apart. We're hoping they don't do that. But it's just, that's why I love sports so much, is because when you have the proper coaches, it's really about life more than it is about the sport itself.
Absolutely.
And, you're going to set them up for success, and, they're going to become, well, like you said, the first person somebody's going to want to employ.
Yeah. Yeah. You look at, like a lot of guys my age, I'm a huge fan of the Miracle on Ice story. The 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. You look at almost to the letter, or almost to the person, every one of those guys went on to be very successful, maybe in hockey afterwards, but after hockey, that continued. You know, and their coach, Herb Brooks, said, hey, I just want to know at the end of this that these guys put it all out there. They gave everything they had. They couldn't give any more, and he did a good job of molding those guys. And we talked about who to push, who he could not push, and he knew, and so he got the best out of everybody. And he really developed a team culture, and that carries on to working in the real world. You're not going to get along with everybody that you work with. Well, you're going to get along with them, but you're not going to be similar personalities.
Right.
But you figure out how to work with that person. I see that too in college sports. My son, all three of my sons were Division I athletes, and I think what they figure out is, these are my teammates, and he's quirky. And he's got some really quirky things. And, probably by the time they're juniors, they look in the mirror one day and they go, I got some quirky things too, and we're all a little quirky, but gee, we work well together, don't we?
Yeah.
And I think, sport teaches that.
Sport
and I think
teaches
it's wonderful.
That. I made my kids, 2 boys and 2 girls, I made them share rooms. And it just so happened that I've got one boy who's messy and one boy that's neat and tidy.
Yeah.
And then I got one girl that's messy and one girl that's neat and tidy. So it was this Felix and Oscar thing going on. They, they had to figure it out, and they would try to bring me into their arguments all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's for you guys to figure out. I'm like, I've already talked to her, or I've already talked to him about cleaning up his room, but I can't do it for them, and I'm not going to keep hounding them. This is something that you guys need to work out, your roommates,
Absolutely.
And you're going to be a roommate pretty much the rest of your life, right? Most people go from the home they grow up in to college, where you've got a roommate or more than one roommate a lot of times. And then you go into a relationship. Now you got another roommate, right?
Yeah.
And then you have kids, and now you have more roommates, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So life is just a bunch of roommates, So you better learn how to get along.
Yeah, be tolerant of somebody else's
or
weirdness.
learn how to confront people if something is bothering you.
Absolutely.
Learn how to have those discussions. Learn how to, it's all that.
Yeah. And I think when you're on a team, you learn how to confront people sometimes,
Yeah.
people call you out and you didn't do your job.
Right.
And maybe you do the same.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, just think about this sometimes with my own children. My oldest son was a college swimmer, captain of the swim team. My middle son ran for the University of Wisconsin, cross country, indoor and outdoor track. And my youngest son ran at Princeton. And people say, well, I must be really proud of your kids for, what they accomplished, in sports and et cetera. And I said, yeah. I said, but I'm mostly proud that they're good men.
Yes.
They're good contributing members of society. But in addition to that, I'm really proud that each and every one of my boys is not afraid to take things on. To learn new things.
Right.
They say to themselves, yeah, I think I can do that.
Yeah.
They don't run away from challenges.
Yeah.
Whether that be, my middle son who ran for Wisconsin, he said, I'm going to get back into fishing, and so, cause he fished when he was little, he went out this week and he found the right bait, etc. And he limited out in salmon on Saturday.
Wow. That's cool.
And he's got a big, picture of him holding these fish and he's just, smiling. And I think that's just great. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is I didn't tutor him on that.
No.
Nobody else tutored him on it. He figured it out.
Well,
and I think that's what sport can give kids is the ability to say, yeah, I think I can do that.
Yeah. And
Why
you know what
can't I
that
do
is?
that?
It's confidence.
Yeah, it is.
It's
It
confidence.
is.
I can do that,
Right.
And confidence is power and confidence is freedom, So if kids can learn that young, it's invaluable.
That's where Ironman sometimes for adults even is a game changer. It's like I tell people, if you do an Ironman, your life's never the same. If you finish an Ironman, your life will never be the same because you've done something that's really, really, really difficult to do, even if you're not a pro or even if you're not grabbing a Kona spot. You just did something that's really difficult and you'll never look at things the same again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have
I had to talk to
persevered.
Dan. I didn't ask Dan that
Yeah.
if his life changed after he.
It changed. Yeah. Again, Dan was a little different cat in that, he'd already seen a lot of things.
Right.
And had to move on.
Yes.
Dealt with some nastiness and the next morning,
Yep.
he's back in the office and,
Right.
et cetera. But, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, thanks for being on.
Thank you.
So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, if they want their kids trained, their personal training, anything like that, you pretty much do it all.
Mm-hmm.
Fastandyou.com. Fastandyou.com.
Right. And then they can look under
Dwight
contact.
Sanvold.
Yeah.
Oh,
just,
okay.
there's a contact section there. Or my email, I can give that out.
Okay.
It's my name, Dwight, DWIGHT, Sanvold, SANDV, like victory, OLD, .com.
Okay.
At yahoo.com. Dwight Sanvold at yahoo.com.
At yahoo.com.
Yeah. So either of those are good. I don't do any other communication platforms.
Yeah.
No,
that's fine.
I have
fine.
a Facebook page, but
yeah, the website's probably the best place to find
it's
you.
the best. I don't get on those other things very often.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll put that in the show notes so people can find it there too.
Cool.
If they're driving right now and
thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks for being on. This was fun.
Good.
We went so many
I had
different
fun
places.
too.
I know. It was great. So, all right. Well, thank you very much.
You betcha.
See you soon.